All right, thanks, guys. We are now 4-0 in our last four $1.99 daily best plays, following Thursday's bets on BrockPage.com. And due to a weird turn of events, we're actually still 5-0 in our last five board member tier package picks on that very same website, and I'll explain a little bit more about that at the end of the video. Now, the link for both of those packages I just mentioned is in the description section below. The picks that I give out on BrockPage.com, they're actually my personal bets, games that I personally have action on. And with that, guys, let's go ahead and dive into some free picks here. We're talking about the Pistons taking on the Magic, 7 o'clock Eastern start time on Friday, January 28th, 2022. Orlando is -3 with a total at 212.5. Now, the Magic successfully covered the point spread recently against the likes of Chicago, Charlotte, and Washington. Having said that, though, these guys have still lost 8 out of their last 10, and they're winning only 14% of their home games. And of course, speaking of home games, the Magic score fewer points per contest on their home court than any other team in the NBA. These guys are horrible offensively. They're also dead last in home offensive rebounding, and they find themselves shooting just 30% from beyond the arc at the Amway Center. Like I said, these guys are terrible on the offensive end of the court. They're taking on a Pistons team who successfully covered the point spread in their last 4 straight ball games. They also went 70% against the number in their last 10. And not only do the Pistons have a winning record against the point spread overall for the season, they also covered the point spread in 12 games on the road this year. Cade Cunningham, he's dropping over 16 points a game, along with 5 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, Saddiq Bey, he's scoring 15 points a night himself, along with 5 rebounds and a couple assists as well. The Pistons actually covered the number here recently against the likes of Denver, Utah, and Sacramento. And when it comes to the injury report in this one, Grant and Livers are still out indefinitely. Olynyk and Jackson, they are listed as questionable. Meanwhile, for the Magic on the other side of things, Moore, Carter Williams, and Hampton, they're all still out indefinitely for them. And when it comes to the total in this one, 5 out of Orlando's last 8 ball games got over the posted number. They also went 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with Detroit. So if you're into historical trends or head-to-head matchups, we've seen we've seen our fair share of overs between these two teams. Now, the Pistons, they saw overs recently with the likes of Denver, Sacramento, and Phoenix themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean toward Detroit +3 in the over 212.5. Next contest, it is going to be Lakers versus the Hornets, 7:30 Eastern start time. Charlotte is -7 with the total at 228.5. Now, Charlotte lost 2 out of their last 3 ball games, and they gave up a considerable amount of points in the process. Having said that, though, Charlotte still got the W in 7 out of their last 10 outings, and they successfully covered the point spread in 70% of those contests I just mentioned. Now, the Hornets have also done a real nice job at the Spectrum Center this year. They're 13-7 straight up in the Queen City, and they successfully covered the number in 75% of those ball games. Oh, man. Miles Bridges, he's scoring over 20 points a game, along with 7 boards and 3 assists. Meanwhile, LaMelo Ball, he's dropping nearly 20 points a game himself, along with 7 boards, 7 assists. Now, the Hornets average more points per contest offensively than any other team in the NBA. They're taking on a Laker team who's in the second of a back-to-back here this evening, and they've taken the loss in 6 out of their last 9 ball games. Now, the Lakers may have some problems keeping up with the Hornets defensively. The Hornets already score a ton of points, like we just mentioned, and the Lakers, they're currently in the bottom 5 in the NBA in points allowed per contest. So this could be a potentially disastrous combination here. And I'll tell you what, if that ain't bad enough, the Lakers have also struggled getting defensive boards this year. They're currently in the bottom 5 in the NBA in defensive rebounding per game. Now, injury-wise, when it comes to the injury report, LeBron James is questionable for the Lakers. Meanwhile, for Charlotte, it's Hayward and McDaniels who are out. Oubre is questionable for them. And when it comes to the total in this one, Charlotte saw overs recently against Indiana, Toronto, and Orlando. Meanwhile, the Lakers went 60% to the over in their last 10 ball games themselves. I'm going to go ahead and lean towards Charlotte -7 in the over 228.5. Next ball game, it is going to be Celtics versus the Hawks, 7:30 Eastern start time. Atlanta is the 2-point favorite. Total's 218.5. Now, the Hawks have had some issues on the defensive end of the court this season. Having said that, though, more recently, these guys won their last 5 straight, and they covered the point spread in all 5 of those victories. Now, the Hawks are currently in the top 3 in the NBA in shooting the ball from beyond the arc. They're also led by John Collins, who's drilling nearly 42% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging 16 points a game. And of course, speaking of points, you got to mention Trae Young. He's the team's leading scorer this year with 27 points a night, along with 3 boards and 9 assists. Now, Atlanta's averaging 113 points a game at the State Farm Arena. They're taking on a Boston team who won just 9 of 23 when traveling this year. And they also tend to get out-rebounded on the road. These guys have really struggled when traveling this year. Now, the Celtics currently find themselves in the bottom 10 defensively in rebounding per game. So I just mentioned that, but just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that they rank quite low in that rebounding category there. Meanwhile, offensively, on the other end of the court, these guys have struggled a bit shooting the basketball. Boston is currently in the bottom 10 in offensive field goal percentage. Now, injury-wise, Dozier and Bol, they are still questionable for the Celtics. And when it comes to the total on this one, Boston saw overs recently with Portland, Chicago, and Philadelphia. The Celtics also went 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with the Hawks. Meanwhile, Atlanta, they are 60% to the over in their last 10 outings themselves. I'm going to lean toward Atlanta -2 in the over 218.5. Next contest, it is going to be Nuggets versus the Pelicans, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. Denver is -5.5 with the total at 216. And despite winning a bunch of games here recently, the Nuggets really haven't been that great covering the point spread. They failed to cover in 5 out of their last 6 ball games, and they also went just 30% against the number in their last 10. Now, Denver's also had a pretty tough time grabbing offensive boards. They currently find themselves in the bottom 5 in offensive rebounding per game. They're taking on a Pelicans team who's amongst the best defensive rebounding teams in the entire NBA. New Orleans also successfully covered the point spread in their last 3 straight, and they went 7-2 against the spread in their last 9. Now, the big man, Jonas Valanciunas, he's grabbing a dozen rebounds a game this year on average. And he's also scoring 18 points a night as well. Meanwhile, teammate Devontae Graham, he's scoring 14 points a game himself, along with 2 boards and 4 assists. Now, the Pelicans, they also do most of their scoring late in games. And as a matter of fact, the Pelicans are leading the entire NBA in fourth quarter scoring. Now, when it comes to the injury report in this one, Ingram and Hart are questionable. Murphy is out. When it comes to the total in this one, New Orleans saw their last 2 straight get over the posted number. Overs against the likes of Philadelphia and Indiana during that span. Meanwhile, Detroit went 7-1 at the over in their last 8 themselves. I'm going to lean toward the Pelicans +5.5 in the over 216. Next matchup I have for you, it is going to be Pacers versus the Thunder, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. OKC's -1 with the total at 217.5. Now, OKC lost their last 6 straight, and they posted a record of just 1-11 straight up in their last 12. Now, OKC scores fewer points per contest on average than any other team in the NBA. They're averaging just 100 points a game, and they also find themselves dead last in the league in shooting from the field. Now, they're taking on a Pacer team who ranks in the top 10 in guarding the 3 ball on the road themselves. and they also do a really nice job of grabbing rebounds. As a matter of fact, these guys are also in the top 10 in the NBA in defensive boards per game. Of course, when it comes to the scoring in this one, Karis LeVert, he's averaging over 18 points a game, along with 3 rebounds and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Chris Duarte averages over 13.5 points a game himself, along with 4 boards and a couple assists. The Pacers are currently in the top 10 in fewest fourth quarter points allowed on the road. And when it comes to the injury report in this one, Brogdon is still out, Sabonis is questionable. Meanwhile, for OKC on the other side of things, Favors and Krejci, they are listed as out for them. Now, total-wise, OKC went 4-1 to the under in their last 5 ball games, 70% to the under in their last 10 meetings with the Pacers. Meanwhile, Indiana's gone 63% to the under when traveling this year. I'm going to lean toward Indiana +1 in the under 217.5. Next matchup I have for you, it is going to be Clippers versus the Heat, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Now, Miami's -7 at home here with the total at 209.5. Now, Miami did fail to cover here recently against the likes of Atlanta and Philadelphia. Having said that, though, these guys still got the W in 8 out of their last 10 ball games, and they successfully covered the point spread in 80% of those contests I just mentioned. Miami also plays very well at home. They currently find themselves 17-5 straight up at the FTX Arena, and they covered the point spread in 64% of those home games. Tyler Hero's averaging over 20.5 points a game, along with 4 boards and 4 assists. Meanwhile, Max Strus is drilling 40% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging nearly a dozen points a night off the bench. Of course, speaking of three-pointers, the Heat is actually in the top 3 in the NBA in offensive three-point percentage. Meanwhile, defensively on the other end of the court, well, they're allowing only 102 points a game at home, and they're leading the entire association in defensive rebounding. Now, they're taking on a Clipper team who actually has a losing record on the road this year, and they find themselves amongst the worst rebounding teams in the association. They're currently in the bottom 10 in the NBA in offensive rebounding, and they're also in the bottom 3 in defensive boards as well. Now, scoring-wise, the Clippers are averaging only 104 points a game on the road. These guys have struggled offensively away from their home court. And, of course, when it comes to the total and the injury report, Morris and Preston are out for Los Angeles. Meanwhile, for Miami, Lowry and Opala are out for them. Butler is questionable. Now, total-wise, Miami saw unders recently with Portland, Toronto, and Philadelphia. Meanwhile, LA went 60% to the under in their last 10 themselves. I'm going to lean toward Miami -7 in the under 209.5. Next matchup, it is going to be Portland versus Houston, 8 o'clock Eastern start time. The Portland Trailblazers are the 2-point favorite on the road with a total at 231.5. Now, the Blazers dropped their last 2 straight, and they're playing some pretty bad basketball on the road this year. Portland lost 15 of 21 road games this season, and they covered the number in just 33% of those contests. Now, they're also dead last defensively in guarding the 3-ball, and they're actually letting their opponents make nearly 49% of their field goals against them when they travel. This is a Portland team who's been getting very little support from their defensive performance. They're taking on a Houston club who covered the number in 4 out of their last 6. With outright victories during that span over the likes of Utah and Sacramento. Now, the Rockets do most of their scoring in the second half. They're in the top 10 in third quarter scoring at home, and they're also in the top 10 in fourth quarter scoring at any location. Christian Wood, he's averaging over 17 points a night, along with double-digit rebounds. Meanwhile, teammate Eric Gordon, he's been absolutely dangerous from 3 land. Gordon is drilling nearly 45% of his three-pointers this year. He's also averaging 14 points a game. Now, injury-wise, Porter is questionable. Garuba is out. Meanwhile, for Portland, on the other side of things, Lillard and Zeller, they're still out indefinitely. And Larry Nance, he is also out tonight. Meanwhile, Smith, Covington, and Ellaby, they are listed as questionable. Portland, very banged up right now. Now, total-wise, the Blazers went 3-1 to the over in their last 4 ball games, 5-3 to the over in their last 8. Meanwhile, Houston saw 5 out of their last 9 get over the line themselves. The Rockets are also 62% to the over at the Toyota Center. I'm going to lean toward Houston +2 in the over 231.5. Next contest I have for you, it is going to be Jazz versus the Grizzlies, 8 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Memphis is -3.5 at home with the total at 226. Now, Memphis has failed to cover recently against the likes of Dallas and Milwaukee. That in mind, though, the Grizzlies still got the W in 7 out of their last 10 outings. And they covered the point spread in 70% of those contests. Now, the Grizzlies have also been really good at home this year. They're currently 17-9 straight up at the FedEx Forum, and they're actually leading the NBA in offensive rebounding per game. John Morant scoring over 25.5 points a game, along with 5 boards and 6 assists. Meanwhile, Desmond Bane, he's been dangerous from 3 land himself. He's drilling 42% of his 3 balls this year. He's also averaging 17 points a night. Now, the Grizzlies are in the top 5 in the NBA in scoring on average per game. They're taking on a Utah team who's on a 3-game losing streak. And they also dropped 9 out of their last 11. Now, injury-wise, Rudy Gobert is still out for Utah. Meanwhile, Mitchell and Forrest, they are listed as questionable. And, of course, Donovan Mitchell, he's the team's leading scorer. So keep an eye on Mitchell's status if you're looking to fire on this game. Now, defensively, on the other end of the court, the Jazz do tend to give up most of their points in the third quarter. They're actually in the bottom 10 in the NBA in third quarter points allowed. And when it comes to the total in this one, the Jazz are 5-1 to the under in their last 6 ball games, 14-10 to the under on the road. Meanwhile, Memphis saw 5 out of their last 7 fall under the posted total themselves. I'm going to lean toward Memphis, -3.5 in the under 226. Next matchup, it is going to be Bulls versus the Spurs, 8:30 Eastern tip-off. Chicago's -1.5 with the total at 230. Now, the Bulls won their last 2 straight, and they're actually the best 3-point shooting team in the game right now. Zach LaVine's drilling nearly 41% of his 3-pointers. He's also averaging 24 points a game. Meanwhile, DeMar DeRozan, he's averaging 26 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and 4 assists. Now, the Bulls are also shooting really good from the field. They're in the top 3 in the league in offensive field goal percentage. They're taking on a Spurs team on the other side of things who gives up a whole lot of points. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These guys struggle defensively. They're allowing over 113 points a game at home, and they're actually in the bottom 5 in defensive boards. Now, the Spurs have also been pretty bad at the AT&T Center this year. They've won only 9 of 25 home games, and that's good for a win percentage of just .360. Now, injury-wise, Collins and Bates-Diop, they are both still out. Meanwhile, for Chicago, Caruso and Ball, they're still out as well. And when it comes to the total in this one, San Antonio 17-8 to the over at home. They also went 60% to the over in their last 10 meetings with the Bulls. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Chicago, they went 6-3 to the over in their last 9 ball games themselves. I'm going to lean toward Chicago -2 in the over 230. Next matchup, it is going to be Timberwolves versus the Suns, 9 o'clock Eastern tip-off. Phoenix is -8 with the total at 229.5. Now, the Red Hot Suns have won their last 8 straight. And they also posted a record of 11-1 straight up in their last dozen. These guys really are untouchable right now. But with that in mind, you just got to keep in mind that these guys are pretty banged up right now, as they're going to work here tonight without McGee, Crowder, Nader, and Ayton. All those guys out. Not going to see them in action. Meanwhile, of course, Saric, Payne, and Kaminsky, they're still out indefinitely as well. I have no idea if these guys are even coming back this season. But I'll tell you what, as dominant as Phoenix has been here recently, they did fail to cover against the likes of Indiana, Toronto, and Miami recently. They are taking on a Minnesota team who won 4 out of their last 6 themselves. And they do a really nice job of scoring on the road. Now, as a matter of fact, the T-Wolves are in the top 3 in road scoring this year. And they're led by Karl Anthony Towns, who averages 24 points a night. Towns has also been really good shooting from 3-land. He's making nearly 41% of his three-pointers. He's also averaging 9 rebounds a game. Meanwhile, Anthony Edwards on the other side of things, he's scoring over 22 points a game himself, along with 5 boards and 3 assists. Now, injury-wise, when it comes to the injury report here, Beverly and Russell, they are questionable here to play. And when it comes to the total in this one, the T-Wolves went 80% to the over in their last 10 ball games. They were also 18-7 to the over on the road this year. Now, Phoenix on the other side, they saw overs recently against the likes of Utah, Detroit, and Miami. I'm going to lean toward Minnesota +8, keeping this one close, in the over 229.5. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our next and final matchup of the show. It is going to be Knicks versus the Bucks, 9:10 Eastern tip-off. Now, Milwaukee's -8.5 with the total at 217. But as good as the Bucks have been at home here this year, they've actually been pretty bad covering the point spread at the Fiserv Forum. Milwaukee successfully covered the point spread in just 9 of 25 home games, and that's good for only 36% during that span. Milwaukee's actually shot fairly poor, very bad, from the field. Once again, we're going to try to formulate a coherent sentence. Milwaukee's actually shot fairly poor from the field this year. They're in the bottom 10 in offensive field goal percentage at home. Meanwhile, defensively, on the other end of the court, these guys struggled to grab defensive boards at home. They're currently in the bottom 10 in defensive rebounding on their home court. Now, they're taking on a New York squad who covered the point spread in 6 out of their last 9. And they still play some pretty good defense. And as a matter of fact, the Knicks lead the entire NBA in fewest road points allowed. That's not pretty good. That's like very good. Darn near perfect. They're also leading the NBA in defensive field goal percentage away from home as well. These guys are tough to score points against. And speaking of points, when it comes to the scoring, Julius Randle, he's averaging over 18.5 points a game, along with 9 boards and 5 assists. Meanwhile, RJ Barrett, he's scoring 17 points a game himself, along with 5 rebounds and a couple assists as well. And speaking of boards, New York's currently in the top 10 in offensive rebounding. Now, injury-wise, Noel, Arcidiacono, and Robinson are questionable for New York. Meanwhile, for Milwaukee, Matthews and Hood, they are questionable for them. Lopez is out. Now, total-wise, Milwaukee went 70% to the under in their last 10 outings, 60% to the under at the Fiserv Forum. Meanwhile, New York went 8-2 to the under in their last 10 contests against Milwaukee. I'm going to lean toward the New York Knicks +8.5 and the under 217. And with that, guys, we're going to jump into our quick pick recap, powered to you by my website at brockpage.com, where we are currently 4-0 in our last 4 $1.99 daily best plays after Thursday. Give me Detroit +3 over 212.5, Charlotte -7 over 228 and a hook, Atlanta -2 over 218.5. Pelicans +5.5 over 216. Indiana +1 under 217.5. Miami Heat -7 under 209 and a hook. Houston +2 over 231.5. Memphis -3.5 under 226. Chicago Bulls -2 over 230. Minnesota +8 over 229.5. Before I give you my next and final free pick for the video, one final reminder that we are also 5-0 in our last 5 board member tier package picks on brockpage.com as well. I'm going to lean toward the New York Knicks +8.5 and the under 217. And with that, guys, that's going to do it for me. Don't forget to check me out on brockpage.com. If you guys do end up getting a membership here today on that website, just keep in mind, you're going to get billed the day you sign up and then the first of every month following that. So if you do end up getting a membership here today on brockpage.com, you are going to get access to those picks through the end of January. Although I do tell folks in every single video, the earlier in the month you sign up, the better. And guys, if you end up signing up for that board member tier package, another great benefit of that package is this. Board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that website all the way through the end of January as well. So not only do you get access to the board member tier pick itself, you actually get access to every other pick that I give out on that website. The board member tier is my most expensive package. So all the lesser expensive packages, you get free range, free access to. It's an all-inclusive pass. It's our best package that we offer. And speaking of board member, I told you guys earlier in the game, we had a board member play yesterday that got suspended. It wasn't postponed. It wasn't canceled. It was suspended mid-game. It was Delaware versus Towson, and we had one of the sides in that game. I'm not going to say which side we had, but middle of the game, they had to stop it. They had to cancel it because what I read is whatever they treated the court with, it was unsuitable for footing, and guys were slipping and falling everywhere. I guess maybe a couple of the refs slipped and fell too. So they banged the game. They suspended it. So I have no word, no date on when they're going to continue that game. Lucky for me, that play got voided. So still 5-0 in our last 5 board member tier package picks. And once again, board members get access to every single pick that I give out on that website. But most importantly, guys, got to thank you for joining me right here on YouTube. I really hope you enjoyed all this great free content, all this great free information. And with that said, guys, happy Friday to you. Best of luck to you. And I look forward to seeing you later on today on my website at brockpage.com.